back to New York.
I finished up my studies and I practiced law.
I practice law, bird work next door.
Even though we started at the very same time, Alexander Hamilton began to climb. How to account for his rise to the top? Man, the man is non-stop.
Gentlemen of the jury, I'm curious, bear with me. Are you aware that we're making history? This is the first murder trial of our brand new nation. The liberty behind the liberation. I intend to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt with my assistant counsel.
Oh, Counsel Hamilton, sit down. The client Levy Weeks is innocent. Call your first witness. That's all you had to say.
Okay, one more thing.
Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? That attitude may be your doom. Why do you write like you're running out of time? Write day and night like you're running out of time. Every day you fight like you're running out of time. Keep on fighting in the meantime.
Corruption's such an old song that we can sing along in harmony. And nowhere is it stronger than in Albany. These colonies, economies increasingly stalling. And honestly, that's why public service seems to be calling it. I practiced the law, practically perfected it. I've seen injustice in the world and I've corrected it. Now for a strong central democracy. If not, then I'll be Socrates throwing verbal rocks at these mediocrities.
Hamilton at the Constitutional Convention.
I was chosen for the Constitutional Convention.
There is a New York junior delegate.
Now what I'm gonna say may sound
He
indelicate.
goes and proposes his own form of government. His own plan for a new form of government. Talks for 6 hours. The convention is listless.
Right, young man.
Yo, who the F is this? Why do you always say what you believe? Why do you always say what you believe? Giving proclamation guaranteed free ammunition for your enemies. Why do you write like it's going out of style? Write day and night like it's going out of style. Every day you fight like it's going out of style. Do what you do.
Okay, welcome. We're talking about Federalists versus Anti-Federalists, and that was a little snippet from the musical Hamilton, which is a really, really cool musical, a really, really cool album. They do like rap battles, all that fun stuff. And part of that is about Alexander Hamilton, who was a Federalist, and it becomes important because he is responsible for quite a bit of the drafting of the United States Constitution. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. So the first government document was the Articles of Confederation. But the federal government didn't have enough power. Congress couldn't raise taxes, they couldn't mobilize an army, or other fun things that a government can do nowadays. And Shays' Rebellion proved that the Articles of Confederation wouldn't work because it took too long for the federal government to respond to it. So in 1786, Alexander Hamilton, a politician and lawyer from New York City, called for a constitutional convention so that they could discuss a better government. This leads to the drafting of our Constitution. So for the Constitutional Convention, there were 55 delegates from 12 out of 13 states. Rhode Island's didn't want to go because they didn't want a strong central government, and Rhode Island's is just kind of lame sometimes, know what I'm saying? Anywho, there were wide debates about the Constitution and how to redraft everything. A lot of things that were put into consideration was state representation. For example, how many representatives can each state send, states' rights versus the federal government's rights. And slavery became a big thing when it came to states' rights because some states believed it is up to individual states to decide if they want slavery as an institution or not. There were also debates on adding an executive and judicial branch along with the legislative branch. The fear with the executive was that you'd have another king. So the worry that some had with creating a president is you're giving another platform for one person to rule. So they all had to come up with the separation of powers, which we'll dig into that more when we actually talk about the Constitution. Great. So you have Federalists. Federalists were fighting for the Constitution to be ratified. That means that it has judicial, executive, and legislative branch and a stronger central government. I paired the famous Federalists with their Hamilton counterparts so you can have some sort of reference. The cool thing is Hamilton, everyone is a person of color, which is, there's a lot of fascinating insight behind that, but essentially America's scrappy people. People in color in America have often had to be scrappy, so they really buy into that, and it's awesome. Anywho, the biggest one right here is Alexander Hamilton. That's his counterpart, Lin-Manuel Miranda. You also had George Washington. Our first president was also a Federalist. That's George Washington in the play. And then you have James Madison, and that's James Madison in the play. Okay, so the Federalist argument for the Constitution is as follows. The gist is that they need a stronger federal government, and that means state governments will have to be a little bit weaker. Federalists wanted the Constitution ratified with an executive, judicial, and legislative branch, and they wanted to give the federal government power to raise taxes, regulate trade, and mobilize a federal army. They also wanted a national bank, so the government would be in charge of making and distributing money. Most Federalists came from largely populated areas, such as New York City or Boston. These areas also happen to be in the New England region area. Remember we did those regions? Okay, so with every person who has an opinion, there's someone else who has a different opinion. So we have anti-Federalists. To start, the most famous anti-Federalist is Thomas Jefferson. He is also the third president of the United States. This is Thomas Jefferson, his counterpart in the Hamilton play. Okay, so here are what anti-Federalists argued. They preferred state rights and actually argued that the Articles of Confederation is good, give or take a few things. Anti-Federalists believed that the Constitution, with additional branches and powers to the federal government, did not protect states' rights and therefore would not protect individual rights. Anti-Federalists argued that giving all these rights to government would take away from everyone else, including your own individual rights. A lot of anti-Federalists came out of rural areas, so think like Virginia, Maryland, and the Carolinas. This is the first time we start to see political parties emerge. So a political party is a group of people who hold common views about the role of the government, and so they all come together to contest and win elections. Most political parties have some sort of ideological core to them, but these ideologies can change over time. So for example, in today, 2018, Republicans' core ideological belief is that less federal government power is good. So the less power the federal government has, the better. Democrats believe the opposite, which is the more power the federal government has, the better it is. Give or take, like this is very simple, easy way to explain the differences between the two. There's obviously more to it. If you want to know more, I encourage you do your own research. So, with the Federalists and Anti-Federalists emerges the first two-party system. It was the first time there was a party system, and it was the Federalist Party versus the Democratic Republican Party. The Federalist Party became a thing after George Washington was president, and the Federalists created a stronger national government and focused a lot on the economy. So they wanted commercial harmony with Britain, they wanted a national bank, anything that could boost manufacturing in the New England area. The Democratic Republican Party consisted of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, a former Federalist. What a traitor, he switched over. Anywho, they arose. They opposed a national bank. They preferred farming and agriculture over manufacturing. And overall, they were against further industrialization from the federal government. They felt the government only helped elites in New England. My little question to you is, which party reflects democratic beliefs between the Democratic Republican and the Federalists, and which represent Republican beliefs today? So we're going to dig in to see what each party believes a little bit more on Thursday, and you're eventually going to debate for a side. This is not a clear-cut thing. And then hopefully we'll see, based on how we look at the Constitution, which party eventually won out the most in terms of drafting the Constitution, and over time in terms of the power of the federal government. Okay, I'm going to leave you off with some Hamilton. If not, you really should listen to this soundtrack. It's amazing.
Sir. Well, it's the middle of the night.
Can we confirm, sir?
Is this a legal matter?
Yes, and it's important to me.
What do you need?
Burr, you're a better lawyer than me.
Okay.
I know I talk too much. I'm abrasive. You're incredible in court. You're succinct, persuasive. My client needs a strong defense. You're the solution.
Who's your client?
The new U.S. Constitution.
No.
Hear me out.
No way.
A series of essays anonymously published defending the document to the public.
No one will read it.
I disagree.
And if it fails,
Burr, that's why we need it.
the Constitution's a mess.
So it needs amendments.
It's full of contradictions.
So is independence. We have to start somewhere.
No. No way.
You're making a mistake.
Good night.
Hey, what are you waiting for? What do you stall for?
What?
We won the war. What was it all for? Do you support this Constitution?
Of course.
Then defend it.
And what if you're backing the wrong horse?
We studied and we fought and we killed for the notion of a nation we now get to build. For once in your life, take a stand with pride. I don't understand how you stand to the side.
I'll keep on my